And I must tell you, folks, I've got audio sound bites here. I'm somewhat surprised because in a series of these sound bites, the drive-by media is not all that ecstatic over what happened in Virginia. I mean, they're not looking at it as a repudiation of the Tea Party because they know that's not what happened. You know who wants you to think it's a repudiation of Tea Party? The GOP establishment. There's some fascinating numbers here. The Republican National Committee in 2009, in the gubernatorial race there for Bob McDonnell, the Republican National Committee spent 3 times as much money 4 years ago on the same race as they did this year. They spent $1 million. That's it. $1 million for Ken Cuccinelli, their candidate. The Chamber of Commerce spent $0 helping Cuccinelli. Cuccinelli begged Chris Christie to come in a campaign for him. Christie said no, he wasn't going to do it. The Chamber of Commerce spent $1 million 4 years ago in the governor's race of Virginia. As I say, not a dime on Cuccinelli. And here we go again. Just like Mitt Romney, Cuccinelli won independents by 9 points, 47 to 38%. Now, what have we been told collectively for decades by the media? Well, hell, by the political establishment. That is, you need to win the independents. You can't win without the independents. That's what they've all told us. And that has been part of a trick that the media and the Democrats launched to great success against the Republicans. The theory has always been that the Democrats are going to get 80%, the Republicans are going to get 80%, and then there's that great unwashed in there, that 20%. And every political candidate has been approached by every political consultant and said, the consultant has said, I'm the guy that can get you that 20% of the vote. I'm the guy that can get you the independents. And what that did was make the Republicans abandon their base and campaign rather than for everybody. The Republicans end up with a centrist, moderate, wimpy, linguini-spine campaign aimed at so-called independents at 20%. That's the Republicans at every election. Cuccinelli didn't, by the way. But in national elections, the Republicans end up making this move. They get talked into believing that you win the independents and you win. Well, Romney won the independents going away, and he lost, didn't he? And Cuccinelli won the independents going away. He won independents by 9 points, 47 to 38%. And you now know what they're saying? Well, the independents are different than the moderates. Oh, that's new now. Now that Republicans are winning the independents, it isn't any big deal anymore. No, now you don't need the independent. Now you got to go out and win the moderates. Well, what is a moderate? Tell me, Snerdley, how would you, if somebody asked you to explain to them what a moderate is, what would you say? No, it's a liberal without the guts to say so. A moderate is one of two things: a liberal that won't admit it, or somebody that waits to see which way the wind's blowing and joins the crowd. By definition, a moderate isn't passionate about anything. Can't be. But now the moderate, that's where we got to go after the moderates. And there's also another lesson that's being said here by the Republican establishment. They're looking at Christie, they're looking at Cuccinelli. If Cuccinelli would have just been for amnesty, and if he would just, moderated on the social issues, who knows, he could have won. But we couldn't support him when he did it. It's just absolutely obscene what's happened here, if you ask me. Terry McAuliffe, the Clinton bagman, outraised Cuccinelli by almost $15 million. And in the last weeks of the campaign, there were 2 weeks that Cuccinelli had no media. Something like 2 weeks before the election, the last 2 weeks of the campaign, Cuccinelli had no media because the RNC wasn't there, the Chamber of Commerce wasn't there. Do you know, folks, right here, the unions spent as much money in Virginia as the RNC. I mean, before you even get to what the DNC poured in there, the Service Employees International Union basically just canceled out whatever quote-unquote help Cuccinelli got from the Republican establishment. And even the Politico outlet, I've got this in the stack here, the Politico is wondering in their story today if Cuccinelli was beginning to turn the tide against this war on women narrative, because the Democrats were doing that. They were using this tired war on women narrative, and McAuliffe's lead with women was at 24% on Election Day. In polling, it was down to 9%. But true to the Clinton model, you had this third-party spoiler candidate in there. 7% this guy got. And his campaign was bought and paid for by a Clinton bundler or fundraiser. And it is, I'll tell you, it's a shame what happened to Ken Cuccinelli, because he was betrayed by his own party. The man is a great guy. I don't know him personally. I've just interviewed him once for the Limbaugh letter, and I've told you earlier this week, I came away from that interview. This guy was tough, no nonsense. He was fearless. I don't know how he ran the campaign every day. I don't know if he faltered here and there on a couple things. I don't know. I'm just telling you, the interview I had, he seemed to be no-nonsense guy. But the Republican establishment, they're out there, well, he's unelectable. He's Tea Party. He's unelectable. He can't win anything. And they didn't want him to win. This is the dirty little secret. I don't think it's even a secret now. Such is the animus toward the Tea Party in the Republican Party establishment that they are, I'm telling you, they are perfectly comfortable with a Christie win and a Cuccinelli loss, because to them that's a Tea Party loss. So now the Republican establishment can run around and claim the Tea Party is an albatross around their neck. The Tea Party is the death knell, they'll say. Tea Party is why we're going to keep losing. Look, we had this. We could have won Virginia. Our party had it, and they nominate this Tea Party guy, this Cuccinelli guy. There's nothing we could do. They didn't want to help. The Democrats, I mean, and this was a squeaker. They were worried all night at McAuliffe headquarters, and it was supposed to be, according to pre-election polling, it was supposed to be a huge McAuliffe sweep, especially with this placeholder third-party candidate. And that ought to be a lesson to any of you who are still toying with the idea of third party. It's just a guaranteed way for Democrats to win when they. And the takeaway is that in the Virginia race, more people voted against McAuliffe than voted for him. Now, the Politico, I put too much faith in the Politico. They were stunned by the results. Here's it to Chris Cillizza and Aaron Blake of the Washington Post. 6 takeaways from election night 2013. Now, the crux of this whole piece is, and this is the crux, the rest of the takeaways just support this initial claim. Exit polls showed Christie winning among women and running even with his Democrat opponent among Latinos. If Republicans could emulate that in other states, they would win just about all of them. So you see, according to the Washington Post, the way forward for the Republican Party is clear. All the Republican Party has to do is embrace amnesty and moderate its tone on abortion, and they'll never lose another election. Well, that's the take. I mean, that's what the Washington Post, 6 takeaways, but that's the crux of it, and every takeaway after that supports this takeaway. You note here how the goalposts are constantly moved. All of a sudden now it's not enough to win the independents. They've been telling us for decades, you win the independents and you win the election. Now we're told that the GOP has to win the so-called moderates. And here's from this article in the Washington Post, quote, Republicans don't need independents. They need moderates. Despite Cuccinelli's loss, he actually won among self-described independents. At the same time, he lost by more than 18 points among self-described moderates. Well, who are they? As I say, they're liberals who don't want the label. But all this time, see, I don't know about you, but all this time I thought the independents were the moderates. Didn't you? Isn't that what they tried to tell us? Independents, undecided, moderates, McCain, moderate, Maverick, whatever. Weren't you under the impression the independents were the moderates? And that and they were the undecided because they were smarter than everybody. They were not ideologues. They were not closed-minded bigots of the left or the right. No. These people decided candidates and issues, issue by issue and candidate by candidate. They were the cream of the crop. The moderates, the independents, they're the best among us. Blah, blah, blah. Well, Romney wins a majority of them and loses. Cuccinelli wins a majority of them and loses, and now they tell us, well, no, it's not the independents anymore. You got to go out and get the moderates, which means you got to get women who are pro-choice, and you got to come out for amnesty. In reality, these self-described moderates are just liberals ashamed of the brand. And in reality, the Republican Party is the real party of the center. At least the conservative wing of the Republican Party is the real center. And the Democrats today are the party of the radical left. But all of this, I mean, this Washington Post piece, it's just part of a further drive-by effort to move the country further leftward. By claiming, I mean, what else are they trying to do? We say, here's a lesson for you Republicans. See, look at what Christie did. You come out for amnesty. You got to go to Washington, want to work with Democrats. Don't beat them. You can't say you want to go to Washington and beat Democrats. You have to say, if you Republicans want to win, you got to go to Washington and say you want to work with Democrats. And that's what Christie did, and that's what they're citing. Christie said, I'm the guy that can do it. I worked with Democrats here. We got things done. You watch me do it. And they're saying, that's right. What you Republicans need is somebody that can go to Washington to work with Democrats. And what you and I know is we need somebody to go to Washington and Trenton or wherever else and beat Democrats. That's what has to happen. I got to take a break. We'll do that. We'll come back. I'll show you some of the audio sound bites, plus the Politico piece. The Politico piece, why Terry McAuliffe barely won, a much closer than expected outcome, blunts the narrative that this was a clean win for the Democrats going into 2014. And, you know, both parties want that narrative. Both parties want that this was a big Democrat sweep. Both parties do. The Republican Party would not mind at all if the takeaway in Virginia was it was a Terry McAuliffe landslide against the Tea Party. I'm not exaggerating. We'll be back. Don't go away.